Well, it's getting near to that time for NJ4K. Yes folks, we have a live show starting in June in Branson, Missouri. And yes, it's a comedy sci-fi in which we parody and reference any and all pop culture references we can. With our first show, Meet the Ravens, Rewrite into the Past. And what could we possibly be referencing and parodying in this show? Let me think about it for a moment. I know I have it written down here somewhere. Where are my notes? Ah, yes! Back to the Future! Well, it's 2015 and somewhere out there are hoverboards, flying cars and Marty McFly causing havoc in some small town square trying to save his kid's reputation. No, I ain't kidding, he's trapped in Las Vegas at the moment. Maybe you can help him out? It's amazing that such a film as iconic as this has still made an impact on the modern generation. I can only think of one series that has made such an equal impact. Some small film called Star Wars, I think. And it's a strange little thing too, for as a rule, time travel films don't work very well at the box office. Alright, Terminator doesn't count. Or at least not to me, as even that franchise has managed to screw up the genre at one point in its long tenure. No, it doesn't count that the 11th Doctor, Matt Smith, makes a brief appearance. Because even he can't fix the messed up timeline in that series. Thanks a lot, Genesis. Or whatever. Back to the Future. Back in the day before the film even saw the light of day, you will not believe that pitching Back to the Future would have been such a hard sale. Both producers and writers of the film, Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, found themselves at odds with every major studio who commented that they thought it was a really nice, cute, warm film, but not sexual enough. And subsequently kept suggesting that they approach Disney, who, as we all know, were producing such nice and fluffy movies at the time. But the irony was, by the time they actually approached Disney with the idea, the mother falling in love with the son subplot was considered too risque and controversial for a family film under the Disney label. Yeah, and egg-whisking Anthony Perkins and Visions of Hell were considered cute and fluffy and truly suitable for family viewers at the time. Not that Disney's run of dark live-action family entertainment at the time came to much success. So sadly the project was shelved for 4 years, until finally, after second-guessing his previous decision not to protect his friend's reputation should the film flop, Zemeckis swallowed his pride and finally came to Steven Spielberg, who whipped up the project and had the project signed up with Universal Studios with one condition. Filming had to be completed in a month. Michael J. Fox was always the frontrunner and choice for the role of Marty McFly, but at the time he was busy with the comedy show Family Ties, so they settled for Eric Stoltz, who impressed the studio at the time as a wonderful actor. Yet sadly, after 4 weeks of filming, Zemeckis and Spielberg found that they were just not getting the comedy gravitas that the role required, and being put on such a tight schedule, film or die, they had to approach the studio and push for more time to film, as they finally got the star they needed for the role, Michael J. Fox, to which the studio agreed, pushing back the release date from its original slot in May 5th, 1985 and adding $3 million to the already $14 million budget on the film. Christopher Lloyd took on the role of Doc Brown after the first choice, John Lithgow, became unavailable for the role, and it's easy to see how the two could pull off the eccentric professor so well. Lloyd had originally turned down the role, but quickly came around after having read the script. And the constant nagging of his wife, of course.
Damn!
Lloyd largely improvised many of his scenes, basing his character on Einstein and Tchaikovsky, and deliberately mispronounced the word gigawatts as gigawatts, which became the character's most famous catchphrase, as well as Christopher Lloyd's himself. Brown's notable hunch came about as a result of Lloyd being slightly that much taller than Fox and having to come down to Fox's height in many of the scenes, which actually worked so well to mesh the friendship of the two. Crispin Glover played George McFly. Zemeckis said that Glover improvised most of George's nerdy mannerisms, such as his shaky hands. The director joked he was endlessly throwing a net over Crispin because he was completely off about 50% of the time with his interpretation of the character. Yet, due to a contract disagreement, Glover was soon replaced by Jeffrey Wiseman in Part 2 and Part 3. Leah Thompson was cast as Lorraine McFly, largely because she had acted opposite Stoltz in The Wildlife. The producers noticed her as they had watched the film whilst casting Stoltz. Her prosthetic makeup for scenes at the beginning of the film set in 1985 took at least 3.5 hours to apply. Thomas F. Wilson was cast as Biff Tannen, because the producers felt that the original choice, J.J. Cohen, wasn't physically imposing enough to bully Stoltz. Conan was recast as a skinhead, one of Biff's cohorts. Had Fox been cast from the beginning, Cohen probably would have won the part because he was sufficiently taller than Fox. Melrora Hardin was originally cast as the role of Marty's girlfriend Jennifer, but was let go after Eric Stoltz was dismissed, with the explanation that the actress was now too tall to be playing against Michael J. Fox. You know, it's amazing how much of this film is actually based on Michael J. Fox's height, but I digress. Hardin was sadly dismissed before she had a chance to shoot a single scene and was replaced with Claudia Wells. Finally, after a grueling schedule between Family Ties and Back to the Future, in which Fox only got an average of 5 hours sleep, the filming was completed on April 20th, 1985, pushing back the release date from May to August. But the payoff was worth it after a highly positive test screening in which Universal decided to push the release date back to June 3rd, 1985. The primetime slot of blockbusters at the time, and after full-time editing of 24/7 on the sound editing board, the film was finally released with only 8 minutes cut from the film.
Hey Doc, are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
Unfortunately, it was released on the posters with the tagline, "Are you telling me my mother's got the hots for me?" Much to Zemeckis' dismay, fearing already that the film would be a flop with Fox's connection to the Family Ties series. And how wrong he was, as Back to the Future spent 11 weeks at #1. Gail recalled, "Our second weekend was higher than our first weekend, which is very indicative of a great word of mouth." The film went on to gross $210.61 million in North America and $173.2 million in foreign countries, accumulating worldwide a total of $383.87 million. Back to the Future had the 4th highest opening weekend of 1985 and was the top grossing film of the entire year. Famed reviewer Robert Egbert said in his review of Back to the Future, "One of the things that all teenagers believe is their parents were never teenagers. And believe me, I'm sure my kid would never see me that way back in 1985. And I'll give you a spoiler of my review. I love it, and so does she. As I said before, time travel is a dangerous subject when it comes to Hollywood. Either it's 2D Ex Machina, or simply lampooned as it was in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. With Back to the Future though, it's not simply a matter of going back in time, having a bit of fun and then coming back. It weighs a far more complicated danger of such practices, such as the grandfather paradox. Or in this case, what if I prevented a certain action from happening? Is history a matter of what happened or could happen? And Back to the Future explores these themes with a level of comic maturity you can't help but feel on the edge of your seat. With Marty's dilemma of bringing his parents back together after his mother falls in love with him instead, risking him being written out of history, plus the ticking clock to get him back to the future or remain stuck in the past for the rest of his life, the pace is therefore gripping, humorous and close to the knuckle. Combined with a gripping score by Alan Silvestri, the tone is exciting, funny and very captivating as you're drawn into every single element of the story. Combined with the tremendous acting from the cast, most notably Fox and Lloyd, who are quite clearly enjoying the roles, Back to the Future, even today, deserves its iconic place in cinematic history. I'm not kidding when I say this is just a favourite film of mine. It is the most favourite film of mine that has captured my heart and imagination for decades, and I never tire of watching it. No, it's not crying out for a remake, and it never should. This film stands on its own as perfection in absolutely every way. A shocking success story that can only mark itself with something that very few films, even the Star Wars trilogy, simply can't match. And I for one am proud to hold tribute to it in my latest stage production. So with that out of the way, we'll be looking at the sequels that followed it and see if they hold up to the original, or brought the franchise crashing down with a seed of mediocrity and loyal fanboys who see no evil in the trilogy no matter what. Till next time, ciao.
Back to the future.